Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Torah Tuesday. And also happy Purim. Today happens to be the day of Purim. I'm not going to be talking about the holiday here. There are some really interesting source sheets and a Nagun that I co-created that are available on Safaria if you're interested in my thoughts on Purim. But today we are coming to the end of the book of Exodus, just a few parshiot left. And this week is Ki Tisa. And this one's kind of personal to me because my younger child, it was what she did for her bar mitzvah. And they actually went through all of the Torah portions in the area and picked this one because it has the attributes of the divine, which they remembered from the high holiday services. We'll get to that a little bit later because we are going to cover that. Right now, let us open up our Safari web page. And here we are at the beginning of Ki Tissa. So we've been doing a lot about the preparation of the Mishkan, and then this is sort of taking a little break from that. It's talking about a census. Um, it's a little bit more of making stuff. Um, there's kind of some more, there's a special oil that you make for anointing people. That's, not so interesting to me. And then here's something a little bit interesting. Then it talks about this guy, Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur of the tribe of Judah, and I've endowed him with the divine spirit of craft and abilities. Uh, so I'm going to keep this one because I know what's coming later. And I think it's kind of interesting. Son of Her, just as a side note, that's Ben-Hur, like the movie Ben-Hur. This, of course, takes place a long time before the time period of Ben-Hur, but it's that same family. It's this idea there's this family of her, and this was the skilled craftsman, the person who is going to be kind of the lead artist in creating the tabernacle. But this is a little bit of I'm kind of putting it, I'm blanking on the name of the person who did that, but you know that story? It's like if a gun appears on the mantle in Act One of a play, somebody's going to get shot with it in Act Three. So this is kind of somebody's going to get shot with the son of her later on in the story. Okay, so here's talking about all the vestments and the lampstands. And here now we're getting some more Sabbath introductions. Um, so God finishes up with Moses at Mount Sinai, gives him the pact. And then here's what I'm sure you've heard of is the sin of the golden calf. This is where it happens. Okay. And the people got kind of nervous. Like Moses was gone so long, they gathered against Aaron and said, make us a God who shall go before us, for we don't know what happened to this Moses, the man who brought us out of Egypt. So we are definitely going to keep this. Oh, this is not Tirama Torah Tuesday. We want Kitissa Torah Tuesday. Okay, we've added that. So those early ones with her didn't get added. I'll have to go back and add those later. So um, Aaron says, okay, take off your gold rings. And then he took them and he cast them in a mold and he made them into a molten calf. And then they exclaimed, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, do you remember the Egel is calf, and this word mesacha, masecha, sorry, is molten. Now, this might strike a chord with you because and this is probably why the to Ramah Torah study, if we go back um, just a couple of weeks, we saw that when they were making the cherubim or the lampstand, they had to be made out of hammered work. But we've seen uh, in Leviticus and also in Exodus, don't turn to molten gods for yourself. Okay, so what I like about this, I think, is that I can just add this. I thought I could just add this directly to um, directly to our sheet, but maybe not. I have to go through this intermediary because I want to talk about this. Like God just told them, don't make molten gods. We just saw that like hammered work was preferred. So what's the story with that? Okay. Um, do not make molten gods for yourself. We're just getting all of the laws. It's don't worship other gods. And then as soon as things get tough, they start making a molten god. Whereas what's preferred is you know it. There we go. Okay. What can I tell you? I'm a Gen X rabbi. I love MC Hammer. I used to like to go to clubs a lot in the 90s. Hammer's the man. And Hammer Time was okay, but um, Molten Gods were not. Okay, so let's see. Let's make sure that these have been added so far to our source sheet. Yep, there they go. Moses was late. And then we're hearkening back to this don't do the molten gods thing. Okay. So and then so here there is. Aaron has made this molten calf. And then it says when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, tomorrow shall be a festival of God. And notice the way that God is put in bold here. I'm going to add it to the sheet. And we'll just pop over to the sheet because um, here it's saying he cast a mold and he made it into a golden calf. And then the people explain, this is your God, Elohecha. Okay, so we're going to bold that. Who brought you out of the land of Egypt? It was this calf. That's going to piss off Moses. It was not the case, but Aaron is doing something a little bit different. Okay, Aaron says, he says when he saw this again, and what did he see? We're going to answer that question in a couple minutes. Tomorrow shall be a festival of God, and it's Ladonai. It is the Yud He Vav He. That is God's name, the name we don't know how to pronounce. Elohim or Elohechem, which is your God, um, that's some more Velohe, Mechem, molten gods. That's just a more generic term for a god. Um, but here, Aaron seems to be talking about like God. So let's look at some commentary and see what is going on here. Um, you may remember first place we often start for commentary is Rashi. Okay. Um, so right here's something about he saw there was a breath of life in it, and it was Satan. Um, so there's kind of some long explanations, but the thing that I kind of there's better explanations of some of this stuff we'll get to later. But maybe this was a delaying move. Let's like, okay, we got this altar. We'll have a festival tomorrow, and he hoped maybe Moses would be back and forestall things. But we got to wonder, like, what the heck was Aaron up to here? He's Moses's brother. He's in line to be the high priest, and here he is. He's building a golden calf. Um, all right, this is kind of the grammar of I saw this, but it does like there's a little bit of did he see the calf? What was it that he saw? Okay, what about Rambam Nachmanides from the 13th century? So here, maybe he saw them set on evil so that they could bring offerings to the proper name of God upon the altar which he built, and not to the shameful thing, not to the golden calf. So that's kind of interesting. Aaron was built this golden calf, and now he's building an altar for God. What's going on here? Um, so I'm going to add this to the sheet. This could be kind of the interesting thing to talk about. And what's there's this other phrase here, like the next day people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices, and they were eating and drinking and dancing. And you may remember if those of you who still remember the Charlton Heston version of the Ten Commandments, this was really kind of debauchery, and people were, making out on the golden calf, and things were getting really sexual as much as they could in a 50s movie. So it's not a good scene. Anyway, here we are. We're still trying to figure out though what the heck was going on with Aaron building a golden calf. I don't like this. You may mix the joy of serving the Lord with any other kind of joy. Maybe other people would have a better um, context for that, but that certainly doesn't say anything to me. Um, so what did Aaron see? Well, they're saying maybe they became afraid that they would realize the golden calf was just BS. Maybe uh, I don't know. This is sort of some drama about a leadership succession, and he didn't want to get in trouble. Maybe it doesn't like strike me as all that particularly interesting. Um, so let's try to get like some other sources. I know like under Midrash, I saw something interesting. Where was it? It was Pirkei to Rabbi Eliezer. He's got some interesting things to say. So, getting to this question of what Aaron saw that Hur, the son of his sister, was slain, and he built for them an altar. And he said, and when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. So, okay, so this Hur guy, remember we saw that earlier? Well, here's kind of a reference to Hur, um, that he was killed. Why was he killed? Um, that's a good question. Let's look under, I saw something under Musar. Ori Israel was written by Rabbi Israel Salanter, one of the giants in the 19th century Musar movement. So the sins of the father things we're going to get to a little bit later. Um, what did Aaron see? He saw her was killed before his eyes. If I don't obey them now, they will do to me what they did to her. So that's maybe an interesting explanation why Aaron would go ahead and create this molten god. The first person they went to, they killed. So Aaron, to save his own life, went ahead and created this molten god. Um, you're not actually supposed to do that. Idolatry is one of those sins that it's better to be killed than to commit. But nonetheless, certainly that was an explanation for his conduct. But I had another source I wanted to get to. It was in Midrash. Which one was it? It was Vayikra Rabbah. This was something that was interesting. Okay, so this was talking about the book of Leviticus, which means Vayikra. So obviously they have, because this is cross-referenced, there must be some cross-reference. So so Aaron was afraid because they had initially approached her, and when her would not do the golden calf, they killed him. So, um, so here's kind of, there might be something interesting in here. We'll add this to the sheet. There's a lot of kind of depth and juicy stuff that's in there. Um, okay, so one thing that I was hoping to kind of figure out is um, why the people kind of panicked so much. And I didn't exactly see that in this section. Why they would kind of go and build this molten calf. And I just didn't see. Um, so this is kind of interesting. This might be, I'm looking at Rambam's explanation of this, and it's saying they weren't actually going to worship the calf. I think it's saying that they were kind of using this as a focus for their worship of the divine. I don't know. I'm going to look into that a little bit more, perhaps. Any other commentary on that? Rabbeinu Bahya, does he have anything to say? He often has interesting stuff. Um, all right, this is getting really a little bit deep here. So I've got kind of gone off my own plan because I wasn't going to get into this that much, but I want to get into something a little bit lighter. Okay. Because people made this big mistake, and Joshua goes up to get Moses, and uh, God gets really angry, and Moses tells God, "Don't kill everyone." And then Moses gets angry and smashes the tablets. And then um, so there's a confrontation in the in the camp. And then God is talking about, all right, I'm going to send out people, an angel ahead of you to help with these other folks. Um, so here, Moses, now we're into chapter 33. Moses is starting to ask for forgiveness. And he's saying, let me know, have I gained your favor? And if I've gained your favor, maybe give your favor to the people. Um, and how will the people know that they've been forgiven? And then Moses is like, let me see you, God. And it's an interesting connection to this first part because in the first part, there's this amorphous God they've never seen before. They're holding on by a string. They're kind of panicked. The only thing that's keeping them going is Moses, and Moses is gone. So they're trying to say maybe it's maybe we need a statue to kind of help us focus on this God. Bad call, really not helpful, angered God. So here's another way of trying to understand. Moses is saying, well, let me see your presence. And God answer, I will make my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim my name. So let's just put this in because I want to pick up on this thread of understanding the divine. Okay. But you cannot see my face. So it's station yourself by a rock, and I will pass by, and you can see my back, but not my face. Okay. All right. That's interesting. And then there's these instructions, carve uh, some more tablets. And then God comes down and starts proclaiming God, God, which is Adonai, Adonai, El Rahum ve'Hanun, Erech Apayim ve'Rav Chesed ve'Emet, which we may remember from the high holidays. We sing Adonai, Adonai, El Rahum ve'Hanun. So these are the divine attributes. This is like if you really want to know, God's saying, if you really want to know me, you can't see me, you can't fathom me, but you can know my uh my qualities and you can emulate them. Okay, so slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the thousandth generation. This is all great, forgiving iniquity, transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of parents upon children and children's children and upon the third and fourth generations. Okay, so I gave one of my sermons on the high holidays about this, but I didn't talk about this visiting iniquity of parents upon children and children's children. That just doesn't seem right. I mean, what the heck? What the heck is going on here? Um, that is not kind of an attribute of the divine that I want to get behind. Is that really the case? How do we make sense of this? Well, in terms of the commentary, let's look into this. How did the rabbis deal with it? And more importantly, how did other books of the Bible? Because I just look at this and I'm like, wah, no way. So let's look at the Tanakh. Where else does this appear? And I happen to know that the book of Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, talks about this. And I look and I don't see a connection. Okay, so I have looked this up elsewhere. Okay, here is Ezekiel. And in this part of Ezekiel, someone's saying, why hasn't the son shared the burden of his father's guilt? But the son has done what is right and just and has carefully kept all the laws, he shall live. Because up here we say the father practiced fraud. So he was a bad dude. So if we believe what's in the Torah, the son should suffer. But the son hasn't suffered, okay? And the book of Ezekiel, that was written hundreds of years later, says only the person who sins shall die. So already the Jewish Bible is refuting and disagreeing with what's in the Torah. So just as we had this reaction, like that does not seem right, it did not take very long for the prophets to undo and refute what it says in the Torah. So let's add this to the sheet. Let's see what else is in the Bible. Um, there is in Micah, it's another one of the prophets. Um, it repeats, who is like you, forgiving iniquity and remitting transgression, not staying angry forever, toward the remnant of your own people because you love graciousness, because you love chesed. Micah just cuts that part out. There's no mention of it. It just edits it right out. So that's another negation, erasure of this. Uh, Now, interestingly, the book of Nahum is really kind of harsh and nasty. Um, I don't know, this isn't what I thought it was saying, so never mind that. Um, okay. And even in the book of Numbers, uh, the book of Numbers does repeat um, this admonition about the third and fourth generation. So during the writing of the Torah, this was kind of considered okay. But by the time we get to the prophets, they've started eliminating it. I wonder how this was translated in the Targum. This was between like 200 BCE to 200 CE. Um, so this is still kind of the same idea is part of the Targum. Okay, what about commentary? Well, Rashi says a couple of interesting things. First of all, this idea about extending kindness to the thousandth generation. So it's like um, he's kind of talking about stirring up mercy, no means clearing the guilty. So there's this idea that if someone repents, it's cleared, but if they don't repent, it's not cleared. So I'll add that to the sheet. Maybe we'll include, maybe not. And the idea is that, do I want to start talking about repentance? I think that's really important when we're talking about sins. Ezekiel kind of did away with this. Don't just punish children for what their fathers did, but there's no discussion of repentance. Um, all right, and then they're saying, well, the measure of good reward is greater than the measure of punishment. I'm going to add it to the sheet. I'm not sure that I want to kind of go down that road, but it's an interesting. Um, Here's a lot about forgiving iniquity, forgiving transgression. Okay, that's fine. Um, but what I think, oh yes, Sforno said something really interesting. Um, um, when the latest generation intensifies the evil prepared by their fathers and grandfathers, that's when they are suffer. Um, so where was this? Okay. So I'll add this to the sheet because it's talking about, I think it's talking about the what the parents and ancestors do. Now, this was the other bit from Ori Israel that was interesting. It is citing the Sanhedrin 27b, which is the Talmud, visiting the sins of the fathers upon children. This is when they perpetuate the acts of their fathers. So if the children are just as evil as the fathers, then they get taken to task. Okay, so I'll add that to the sheet as well. And then there's this reference somewhere to Jeremiah 7:26. I saw that in one of the sources, but I can't remember where, so I'm just going to look it up. 7:26. I spelled it wrong. Yeah, and here from the prophet Jeremiah, it says that, let's put the Hebrew up as well. The day your ancestors left Egypt, and I kept sending all my servants and prophets to them daily and persistently. They would not listen to me or give ear. They stiffened their necks and they acted worse than their ancestors. So, this seems to be an example of when when the children are acting worse than the father, that's when they can be punished. So, let's go take a look at the source sheet we've put together. So the people got panicky, and then um, they made this molded gold, which was bad because here we saw hammered gold good, molded gold bad. And then Aaron kind of comes along and builds this altar to God. And what's that about? Um, so we have Rashi's take on this, and we saw a lot of sort of explanations that um, sort of call into question what Aaron's motives were. Maybe Aaron was just trying to position himself with favor for a new leader. Or maybe Aaron was doing self-defense because this craftsman Hur was already killed. And then here we have more explanation from Sanhedrin about um, Aaron's sin which he did out of fear because of the murder of the priest. And then again, more about the priest getting killed, or not the priest, sorry, her getting killed. And then, uh, all right, so then a little bit more about the idolatry. And then we switch because it's this whole first part, my takeaway is they're trying to kind of figure out what's the nature of God. Were they thinking that maybe a statue would help them connect to the divine in a true way? Or were they really just lapsing back into idolatry? And then a little later, it gets into this other exploration of God where Moses is saying, let me behold your presence. And God is saying, no, just let me pass near you and you can experience and I'll tell you about my attributes. Okay, and so then here we get these 13 attributes and kindness and forgiveness and compassion, all good. But then there's this punishment of the children for the parents' sins, and that does not seem good at all. So we get some explanation of that, both from the prophets and then from some of the commentators. So it's an interesting example, both of how biblical writers were wrestling with and commentating on something in the Torah, and then later generations and the rabbis were commenting on this as well. I would love for you to join us on Torah Saturday and we can explore a little bit and see, do what is your take on these things? I would love to hear it. If you have been watching, thank you so much. Please follow the American Musar channel and give this video a like and a share so other people can see it as well. Thank you. Take care.